Surprise.
Oh my goodness. And we're live. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to today's episode of The Curious Leader's Path with our really fun title, Gratitude and Brussels Sprouts. We had fun doing this. Unfortunately, we don't have Joanne with us today, but Kat and I are here. And whoever's with us, as always, we welcome your comments. So what we're talking about today is gratitude and how it shows up and what's important about it. And maybe Kat, you want to jump right in and start us off with like what do we mean by gratitude anyway?
Very good question. I think a lot of people think of gratitude as what we were talking about just before we got online, journaling and sort of counting their blessings and all of those things can be very important if it's done the right way for the right person. And to me, what the important part and what research shows us is the important part is you've got to feel it. Just writing in a journal isn't enough. I mean, there can be very important cognitive processes that happen, but if you're not genuinely feeling it in your body and feeling gratitude, then you're not really getting the true benefits of gratitude. So what gratitude actually is, there's so many benefits that we can get from gratitude according to science. And they just kind of give you this laundry list, but they don't actually explain in a lot of articles that I looked at. They don't really explain why we have those positive benefits from gratitude. It's not some miraculous, magical woo-woo thing. But what happens is when we really are genuinely practicing gratitude, genuinely feeling grateful for what we've got, or what we've experienced or whatever the situation is, it goes into our body and it releases a bunch of hormones, it releases a bunch of brain chemicals, it creates biological processes within us. And basically what's happening is when we feel grateful, it's relaxing our nervous system so that we go into the parasympathetic state, the relaxed state, because it basically, what we're doing is recognizing, for those of us in the Western world that are middle class or above, basically gratitude, what it allows us to do is to say, even though things may not be perfect, we actually do have enough. We have what we need. We have beauty, we have, some food, we have whatever it is to be grateful for. And that sort of allows us to go from this fight or flight or freeze state, the threat response, which is, what did you call it? The abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset, right? So scarcity mindset is where we constantly feel like we have to fight and search and hunt, and because we don't have enough. But what gratitude does is it allows us to relax and go into that parasympathetic state, which is the abundance mindset. And for me, abundance mindset is a bit different than a lot of people talk about. It's more really that we have what we need to survive, and we probably even have a lot of what we need to thrive. And that's the magic of it. Because once we get into that parasympathetic state, it allows us to pay much more attention to what's happening around us. It allows us to use our senses much more effectively. That allows our bodies to do much more healing processes. So we go into a lower stress state, which then can allow healing to happen. We can sleep better, which allows healing to happen, allows us to be more present. So there's all of these spin-off benefits that happen when we go into the parasympathetic state. And that's why all these miraculous things can happen, is because we're not basically stressed, pissed, or whatever other negative stuff we get when we're in the sympathetic, the riled up state. Yeah. Is that how you would define? Sorry.
No, I love that. Is that how I would define gratitude? That's a longer and more complex definition. But I love that it's based in science. But what comes up for me when you describe it that way is we know that there's a power that's associated with gratitude on an individual level. But what comes up for me is gratitude at scale then would be real magic. Like if you've got a bunch of people that are operating in that parasympathetic space, then not only is it more likely that they'll all be relaxed and kind and able to take advantage of the things that allow us to thrive. And I'm thinking of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and where on the upper part of the pyramid those things might exist. but it also seems to me to be more likely that people will be helpful within that situation. Like if I see someone struggling, I'm more likely to give. I'm more likely to to lend a hand, to assist, whatever, right? If I'm in that space of I'm going to call it gratitude, but that parasympathetic, sort of juicy space that you were talking about. I don't know how to describe
Yeah.
it.
That works. But I think we could go even further with it, right? It's what you're talking about is palliative and remedial. It's responding to people in crisis much more effectively, much more generously, and not necessarily generously in giving more, but really paying more attention. But there's also the preventative side or the healing side that I think is so important is, when we see a bunch of homeless people, we have so much science to know why they're homeless. And yes, I'm glad that there's all sorts of churches who provide shelter space. I'm glad that there's people who are providing food and donating money. I mean, all of that is really essential for people who are homeless. But we also then need to look at why are they homeless? And a lot of research says because they basically come from very abusive backgrounds and therefore they're, I'm going to just call it dysfunctional, but there's a lot more specific science around that. So then if we're in a state of gratitude, it allows us to get into conflict situations, meaning challenging our beliefs, challenging, if we're more relaxed, it means that we're able to go much deeper in what we think about. And it then starts allowing us to, this requires skill sets. This doesn't come directly from gratitude, but gratitude is essential to being allowing us to do this, which is then we start looking at how do we actually address the patterns that create homelessness. And now obviously we've got all sorts of economic problems that are contributing to homelessness and everything else, but I'm talking about the homeless problem before we had a housing crisis. Now there's much bigger issues on top of everything else that we need to deal with. So what gratitude allows us to do is to say, I don't need to, as long as I feel like I know how to get what I need and get enough of what I need, I don't necessarily need a lot more than what I need. And therefore, I'm not going to fight you tooth and nail. I'm not going to approach this from a zero-sum game, which is sort of the scarcity mindset. I'm going to approach this from the perspective of, I need to get enough, and then I can help other people also get enough. And as I make other people better off, then we can sort of all become better off because of solving these problems.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Bruno's in the chat and
Hi, Bruno.
offered, and thank you, Bruno, and has a bunch of words that I can't pronounce about brain chemistry. Actually, I'm just going to pull it up, and because I think
so. You're talking about the dopamine and oxytocin.
Yeah. Oxytocin. That's the one. I can never actually say that one.
Well, when you see it written, it looks different than it's pronounced.
Yeah, it does. But reinforces behavior, encouraging us to seek out more experiences will trigger that positive feedback loop. And I kind of like that because what that suggests to me is that gratitude is self-replicating. And what you were saying about how, gratitude allows us to be in that state. I'm thinking back a couple conversations where our topic was creative conflict. And it seems to me that gratitude and the science that goes along with gratitude that you and Bruno have laid out so well for me, is kind of like the first couple bars in the symphony of creative conflict.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would agree with that 100%.
That's juicy. I like that a lot. So I want that. I want that. I want more gratitude. What now? What do you do?
Not enough.
Because that's the other thing, right? We started off by saying this is hard stuff. It's hard. It's like Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
Right. They're good for you, but it took me forever before I loved Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
It's definitely in the past 10 years.
Now, in defense of Brussels sprouts, and totally off topic from gratitude, is apparently there's a digestive enzyme that children do have or don't have that
Mhm.
make Brussels sprouts bitter. And the older we get, as we either lose the enzyme or get more of the enzyme, I don't remember which way it goes, we actually taste Brussels sprouts differently than we do as kids.
Really?
So, yeah.
That's
So,
fascinating.
because I used to hate Brussels sprouts and now I cannot get enough of them. I love them.
I'm pretty sure that if I still had my mother's Brussels sprouts, I would still hate them
That's a good point. Yep.
because she had a way of doing them so that you could spread them on toast.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah. Yeah. And they were boiled as opposed
oh,
to
not
baked
good.
or,
Not
yeah.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I started liking them when I discovered you could roast them.
So maybe that's the secret to gratitude is we need to, first of all, develop the skill set, the
Yeah.
enzyme.
Mhm.
And we also need to think about how we're going to bake our Brussels
Yeah.
or how we're going to make our Brussels
Yeah.
sprouts, how we're going to create our gratitude. Because I think a
Mhm.
lot of times, and we were sort of talking this before our conversation,
Mhm.
there's so many superficial ways, and I think we both used words that we're not going to use on video, um, about how superficial some of the
Yeah.
gratitude practices are. And, they feel good in the moment, but they don't really,
Mhm.
yeah, you don't get there. So
Can I tell my story? I really want to tell my story. I
if you want
wasn't
to
gonna,
tell
but
it,
I'm gonna tell the story. So you know this because we were talking about this a while ago, but um, I've had an interesting I've had an interesting mental health journey. And in one of, I think that's true for everyone. I don't think I'm unique.
Mhm.
But in one of the companies that I worked for, where I was really, really struggling, and they knew that I was struggling, um, and it was, burnout. Like it was burnout and all that other good stuff. Um,
Frustration, disconnection,
Oh, so much. And it just felt, it
misalignment.
was, yep. And there was nothing that was going right. And I couldn't make it work. I couldn't make it work.
And just for the
And
record, I don't actually think that's a mental health problem. I think that's a social problem,
I agree with you now, but
societal problem.
at
Yeah.
the time, it felt like a mental health problem. Like it felt like a me problem because it was
Yeah.
presenting as anxiety. It was presenting
Well, because you were
you
cracking,
know, yeah, yeah,
you'd had
absolutely.
enough. It's like
Absolutely.
you were seeing the Matrix.
Right. Yes. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, God bless them because I knew that they meant well. In the post for me as a gift, I received a gratitude journal. So,
Oh,
so I could write down all of the things that I was grateful for,
I still
and
have a
that
job.
would,
I still have a job. I still have a job.
oh, ticky ticky check check is what that one was. And and I think that when we think of a superficial example of a gratitude application, that is one. Now, this is not to say that writing in a gratitude journal is necessarily superficial, because if that's what floats your boat and you can achieve that
And
genuine
feel it.
feeling,
Yeah.
right, that you described earlier in this conversation, then fill your boots. I think
Yeah.
that's fantastic. But for me, it just,
Yeah.
like, it landed like a bag of wet cement. And to this day, I
Wet
just,
cement with some nails in it or something.
yeah, like the idea of a gratitude journal just turns me off like you wouldn't believe.
Well, what is nobody should tell anybody to be grateful. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, nobody has the right to tell me that. I don't have the right to tell anybody that. And I certainly don't have a right to give you a gratitude journal unless we've had this conversation and you said you really want one. Right. And it's kind of,
Agency.
yeah, there has to be
That's what.
agency.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with forgiveness is don't ever tell me
Mhm,
to forgive someone. Yeah, we have
mhm,
to choose gratitude. We have to choose forgiveness because it's right for us. And it's always right for us. Like this is where the Brussels sprouts piece comes in, is it's
mhm.
always right for us. Forgiveness. I have to be careful with this. I come from a very traumatized background, so I know that you have to be in the right space for it. But
Yep.
once you're in the right space for it, for gratitude or for forgiveness, it's 100% about us, me,
Mhm,
right? It's
mhm.
about us individually. I'm not doing it for anybody else. I
Yeah.
can't do it for anybody else. I can only, it's the state that I need to cultivate in myself. And it's actually not a state, it is the trait I need to, the enduring
Mm,
way of being that I need to
Mhm.
cultivate. But I have to do it in a way that's right for me at this point in
Mhm.
time. Yeah. And it means I also have to be ready for it. But don't bloody well give me a gratitude journal
Yeah.
unless I've asked you for one or implicitly told you that I would love one, which I don't.
Yeah. It sounds like it sounds like going to the gym. Um, going to the gym and lifting weights. Like I have to start somewhere. I have to start small. I can't
Mhm.
go and bench press my body weight the first day that I show up at the
That's a
gym,
really good analogy. Yeah.
right? Like I have to do little by little by little and build the muscles, and I have to do it
Yeah.
consistently.
Yeah.
Because I think that where the gratitude journal, at least in my case, sort of fell apart was that it was sort of like someone was telling me, well, I could just flip a light switch
Yeah.
and turn on this magical mystical power that
Yeah.
that I hadn't considered was there.
Yeah.
Which now that I think about it, also kind of sounded a little, like who are you to tell me what I think and what I don't think? But that's maybe another story for another time.
I think
Yeah.
there's other things as well. And I'm implying this from some conversations that we've had where I think you're going to align with this. And I would
Mhm.
bet other people do as well. We also have to feel worthy of gratitude. For me, it took me years, decades probably, to really be able to feel grateful. And
Mhm.
there's some complexities to it. And, part of it is my sense of self worth was so low for so long that the idea of feeling grateful felt wrong.
Mhm.
I almost didn't feel like I deserved to be grateful. And then there's another part as well where I also felt if I'm grateful, it gives somebody something to take away from me. And that's sort of the abusive background that I come from. So I don't know if everybody else can align with that or understand that.
Yeah.
But I think there's a whole bunch of things that have to be in place before we can genuinely be grateful. And then we have to develop the skill sets of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It like being ready for it. And
Yeah.
whether it's gratitude or forgiveness or anything, but being ready for it. And maybe the gym analogy works out too.
I think it's a great
Because
one. Yeah.
like if I don't want to go, then I'm going to find a reason not to. I'm
Hmm.
just, I'm not going to bother. Um, and isn't that interesting? Because it's hmm, yeah, Brussels sprouts, the gym, it all could have worked. Okay, so I'm noticing that we have another comment too, and
Yep.
I want to see if we can call that in too. So, and sorry about the glasses and leaning in, but it's my monitor. So here, I'll bring it up on the screen so we can all read it. Um, Zanab, thank you, Zanab, for this. So I'm constantly interested in understanding the psychological and health benefits of practicing gratitude. What are the advantages in these domains when individuals incorporate gratitude into their lives? Do you want to take a crack at answering that?
Well, I would say that goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, that
Yeah.
it's about getting into a parasympathetic state, like really calm
Hmm.
yourself down, but not
Hmm.
tell yourself to calm down, but genuinely feel calm and
Hmm.
safe. And then once you're feeling calm and safe, once you're in the parasympathetic state, that then allows all sorts of really good things to happen in your body, everything from a healing perspective
Hmm.
and a nurturing and fostering and strengthening perspective.
Hmm.
And, with obvious health benefits, low stress, better sleep, better healing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
And on the social level, it also allows you to connect much more effectively with other
Yeah.
people.
What's coming to me as you say that, because yes, absolutely, and it sounds so simple, but it's still kind of hard.
Yeah, and it goes back to the gym analogy, right?
Yeah.
It really is. If you don't, so I had to go through a process where I really had to learn to love myself because I come from such an unloving family, and unloving, unsafe, everything.
Mhm.
Um, my life was put at risk many times.
Okay.
So the lack of self-worth ran deep. Yeah. And when you're in that state, it's almost impossible to feel gratitude. And when you're, for people who are lower income, it would be really hard for some of them to feel gratitude as well, because they are genuinely in a threat scenario where they may not have enough to eat. They may not be able to
Mhm.
keep the electricity on. They may not be able to pay for their rent next month. Yeah. So, I mean, there's all sorts of circumstances, historical or current, that might actually prevent us from feeling gratitude.
Mhm.
There's also, if we think about how our society works, and you had alluded to this as well, and we talked about this in different ways in previous conversations as well, where we're in this, we're so busy and we're so proud of being busy and we're so proud of being needed and we're so proud of being in a constant state of emergency firefighting, like this is our it's sick society. And when you're in that state where everything is an emergency and you feel like the hero that's coming to put out the fire and you're rewarded well for it, you don't want to stop and feel grateful. You want to stop and feel adulated. You want people to say, "Oh, you're the hero, good for you."
Mhm.
But that's not healthy gratitude, right? I mean, it's lovely to hear, and if you really genuinely have done something great, then of course you deserve to be recognized for it. But it's not real gratitude. Real gratitude is connection. Yeah, and maybe this is sort of taking us towards where we want to go as well. The reason that I think this conversation is so important to talk about what is gratitude really is it allows us to connect with each other. It allows us to connect with ourselves first, right? The
Yeah.
more that we can be in the parasympathetic state because we feel like we have enough. It may not be everything we want, but we feel like we have enough. And enough includes not just enough to eat and enough money and enough friends, but it's also enough beauty and enough connection and enough
Mhm.
enjoyment of nature, and which is very important to me, but for other people it will be other things as well, right?
Mhm.
So gratitude is really having a full life, um, and to me that's really critical because that's where our changes are going to come from. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's where we're going to, it's that state of mind, that state of being that we need to be in order to really be able to make change, to connect with each other, and then to work together and challenge each other and figure out how do we actually build the world that we really want.
Mhm.
And Bruno's
Yeah,
got
and I think
another comment.
Bruno mentioned that too.
Yeah,
I can't say it. It's hitting for me.
oxytocin.
Oxytocin. Thank you. Right, the love hormone, released during moments of closeness and bonding, and that's
Yeah,
exactly the connection that you're talking about.
yeah,
That happens when we can express gratitude, and you're right. There's situations that just make it very, very difficult.
yeah,
Like, because I can imagine someone watching this video and going, "All right, Todd and Kat, great. You want me to be grateful, but here are all the things that are making it difficult for me to be grateful."
yeah,
And they're legit. Like, those are
yeah,
reasonable and real things, because you and I, before this conversation, talked about the times when it was really hard for both of us to be
yeah,
grateful, and 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 they're legitimate. Um,
yeah.
and and I guess maybe it kind of starts off with, well, so what is it? Like, what is it that I'm grateful for, even when everything
Hmm.
isn't good, right? Okay, so I woke up today.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm grateful for that. Um,
There were
and
mornings I
that,
wasn't.
right,
I mean,
right, and
there
that's,
were mornings I was, over the last 6 years when I was so sick, there were mornings I'm like,
yeah.
I was not grateful for that.
Sometimes, sometimes waking up is being brave, and
Yeah.
it, so like, the last thing that I want to do is for anyone to walk away from this thinking, oh well, Todd says I should be grateful, or Kat says I should be grateful, because that's not it. But I think it is interesting, for me anyway. It's been interesting to discover those moments when
I
I
just
go,
saw Dr. Robin's comment.
Dr.
Thank you,
Robin.
Dr. Robin.
Thanks, Dr. Robin. I love that she's here. Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that, just finding that one little thing, that one little moment,
Yeah.
Before we started, I shared a practice that I didn't even know was about gratefulness when I started doing it. I think it's probably been, I started doing this when my mom died, which is, over 20 years ago now. And I don't let myself go to sleep at night until I've identified something good that's happened. And it's funny because I tried to get this. I tried to get my husband to do it too. He hates this, so we don't do that anymore. But but that one good thing, like what's that one thing? And it
You
doesn't matter
cannot
what it
force
is.
other people to be grateful,
Absolutely, right?
and not in
And
your way.
exactly. So it works for me. It doesn't have to work for anyone else.
Yeah.
But just that, what's that one thing? And sometimes it's like, oh, you know what? That cup of tea that I had before bed was actually exactly what I needed. So fine, that's
Yeah.
it. I'm going to bed now. And but now I can't go to sleep until I've identified the thing.
But it's such a good habit. And again, for people who are ready to do it, it's
Yeah.
so good that you're training yourself to look for what's good, because that's what you're training your body to then sense and to pay attention to, right? So I think that's such an amazing habit. And the people who count their blessings, there's a few research papers on counting your blessings, like really where you just think about, wow, I have this and this, and I experienced this. And again, the key thing is to really feel it, not just to have the list, right? It's not the mechanical list that matters. It's how you feel because of it. But there's measurable impacts over the short term and the long term if you build that habit, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the key message that we're trying to say is, until you're ready to eat Brussels sprouts, don't eat the Brussels sprouts. Until you're ready to feel gratitude, don't try and feel gratitude. Until you're ready to, and find ways to do it that are right for you. And until you're ready to go to the gym and start lifting heavy like you do, work your way up to it. Do it in a healthy way. Do it in a way that it's fun. Do it in a way that you can perpetuate it and it's meaningful to you.
Yep. Brussels sprouts, because it's you're right. Like, yeah, when I was a kid and they were boiled, they were terrible. But
Yeah.
my goodness, a little olive oil and a roasting pan and some herbs, and they sing. So really, maybe the trick isn't focusing on the Brussels sprouts, but on the preparation.
Yeah. I
Right?
like
Because there's
that.
lots, and I
Nice.
love that because there's lots and lots of different ways to do it. And
Yeah.
if anything that we've said doesn't work, then throw it out. Who cares, right? But
Yeah.
what does? Because it's worth finding what that thing is, whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah. I would agree 100%.
Yeah.
Do what's right for you.
I know. Wow.
And challenge yourself. I mean, you don't want to just sort of sit and wait until you're ready to be grateful, or eat Brussels sprouts, or go to the gym, or any of the other things that we've talked about. Yeah.
Ooh, we have a question. I'm going to bring it up. Dr. Robin asks, have either of you ever struggled with a yeah, but voice when you engage in a gratitude practice? Ooh, you want to take that one on, or shall I?
All the time.
Yep. Always.
Yeah.
Same
And I
answer.
think that really, again, that comes back to what we were talking about, or what I was talking about earlier on, which is I just didn't feel I was worthy of it. Yeah. And I had to learn to love myself. I had to learn to really genuinely appreciate who I am, develop my ability to feel love, because I wasn't even able to feel it. It felt very threatening. Anytime somebody was nice to me or thoughtful, it really felt like a threat. Yeah. So it really, if gratitude is that difficult, or if there's resistance to gratitude, rather than trying to force yourself, I would say just really allow yourself to feel that, respect it, and then really just investigate, where's that coming from? Why am I pushing back on being grateful?
And that's full circle into curiosity, isn't it?
Once again, there we go.
It's kind of the superpower, because, like Robin, so Dr. Robin, yeah, that's great, but this part of my life is awful. Yeah. But that's human, I think. That's how a lot of us operate, because everything isn't going right all the time.
Yeah.
And and it's not, I guess I don't have to be grateful for everything. Maybe that's a way to put it, right?
And you
Like,
don't have to be happy all the time either.
Yeah. Like,
But
just allow it.
In my mind, everything starts with our internal relationship to ourselves. And if
Mm,
we're stuck in a state, I mean, as children, it's a whole different thing because it's not like you picked your family.
mhm,
In my mind, I didn't pick my family.
mhm.
Um, they were well intentioned, but just not healthy people.
Right.
Um, but at a later stage, once we do start having choices, and of course, what we chose to do earlier in life will have an impact on where we are now. But we live
Mhm.
in a world where we still have a lot of choices, either even after we've locked ourselves into a certain path.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard to change our path, but we can always change it. And the question, if you're in a bad relationship, if you're not achieving what you want to achieve, if your life isn't what you want it to be, then the
Mhm.
question is not, it should not only be, what do I need to do? I mean, obviously, that is part of it. What skills do I need to
Mhm.
develop? What's the path I need to be on? How do I learn to really navigate to where I want to go to? But we
Mhm.
really, first and foremost, have to start with, how do I feel about myself? And what
Yeah.
do I believe I deserve? Right. And that
Yeah.
really is that the more that we can genuinely love and respect ourselves and
Mhm.
heal the things that we had in the past, which is really not easy, but it is absolutely possible.
Mhm.
And that allows us then to start attracting completely different things. Yeah. I mean, I've got extensive stories that I can tell about how, year to year, because of the work that I'm doing and healing my psychological and physical injuries, I just see the world differently. Every few years, I notice something is like, I just reacted to a situation in a completely different way than I would have before. And that allows me then to attract more of what I want.
I think that's a good way to end.
We are
I
there.
think that's a good way to end. Yeah. And oh, Kat, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story with us too, because I know some of that's really difficult, and I want to make sure that you know you know how grateful we are for that.
And for our
Thank you.
conversations and for knowing each other and for having
Of
people
course.
tune in like Bruno
Indeed.
and Zainab and Dr. Robin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for the
Okay.
conversation.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for showing up for this episode. We're going to close it off, and we'll see you again next time.